Hello, Brobs. We're back with Anyone's Son, a true story by Roberta Roche with Harry de la Roche Jr. Funny thing happened when I was reading chapter 1. I forgot to push start on the camera after I paused it to cough. Chapter 1, The Unbelievable Tragedy. Let's remove that before it creases the page. It was Thanksgiving, as usual, in the Harry de la Roche home, and no one at the holiday feast that November 25th could have imagined in the wildest sense that in a matter of days, Montvale, New Jersey, where the family lived, would experience the most unbelievable tragedy the town had ever known. Nor could their neighbors possibly foresee that what looked like an ideal family in the Norman Rockwell tradition would be the center of a bone-chilling crime that would shake the foundation of the community and make people say for miles around, this couldn't have happened here. A town of almost 8,000 in population, residential Montvale was justifiably proud of its consistently low crime rate in 1976. A suburb of New York City, the Bergen County community is bordered by Rockland County to the north, affluent Upper Saddle River to the west, and historic Old Tappan and Rivervale to the east and south. Farther south is Hackensack, the county seat of Bergen, and a city that goes back in history to 1647 when Dutch settlers from Manhattan established a trading post there. Montvale's newer $100,000 plus houses are built away from the town's center, while the older, smaller homes congregate closer to the village green. The De La Roche's $50,000 home at 23 East Grand Avenue, a 2.5-story red clapboard house with a tall stone chimney, was 2 blocks from the green. Tall maple trees that were losing their leaves shaded the corner lot, while a basketball hoop and backboard lined the driveway behind the house. The totem pole in the backyard had been a Cub Scout project, and a broken slide and sandbox were abandoned nearby. Similar homes were scattered up and down the tree-lined street. There's the house right after the murders. It was a special holiday that November 1976, as Harry Jr., the 18-year-old son, was home for his first vacation since leaving nearly 3 months ago to start college at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. In 2 days, he'd be returning to the military school, but for the moment, it was family and food and talk of the high school football games around the dining room table. 2 other sons sat at the table. Ronnie, aged 15, a high school sophomore who'd been an all-star third baseman on a baseball team his father had coached, and Eric, 12, a 7th grade student who had played third base on a Little League team and who was now playing football with the local Mustang League. Some people called Ronnie Chipmunk because of his baby fat cheeks, while Eric was often called Dimples since he had a contagious grin. At the opposite ends of the table, Harry Sr. and his wife, Mary Jane, felt the sense of fulfillment most parents experience on the holiday when the first child to leave for school returns to the family circle. Even Lucky and Muffins, the family dog and cat, had found their way to the dining room and were lying at young Harry's feet. Guests for the turkey and trimmings were Joanna and Ernest Abneater, Harry Sr.'s mother and stepfather, Grandma and Pop-Pop to the boys. Ernie, a tall, slim, gray-haired man now retired from a job in the hardware department of a local Corvettes, spent most of his time in his Lodi home, reading a wide variety of books and magazines. Ernie was also an avid coin collector, and nobody knew at the time that later there would be much debate about the fate of his coins. Joanna, whom everyone called Honey, was a sweet, pliable person who had little formal education. She had thin brown hair with straggly bangs, and her face looked noticeably careworn from the difficult life she'd led while working, and sometimes doing laundry as a cleaning woman, to bring up Harry Sr. Now into her 70s, she still cleaned doctors' offices, but she didn't regret her life of hard work because Harry Sr. and his family made everything worthwhile. Though Harry Sr. was 44, she still thought of him as her baby. For Harry Sr., the master of the house, life had been upward mobility since his early days in Weehawken, New Jersey, when he lived with his mother and grandmother. As soon as he was able, he worked at a variety of jobs until at this point in his life, he was an administrator employed in the export department of Ford Motor Company in Newark. 6 years younger than his wife and also a few inches shorter, he was the unquestionable head of the house and a father who appeared to be close to his sons and something of a youth leader in sports. Away from his job, he had won kudos for his community work with the Boy Scouts, Masons, American Legion, Christ Lutheran Church, and Montvale Athletic League. A gun-oriented man, he spent many hours at a nearby rifle range where his three sons learned to shoot. In fact, exactly a week ago, Eric had received the certificate from the National Rifle Association for successfully completing basic rifle training. Harry Sr. was proud of that since he wanted his boys to achieve. He ran a tight ship to encourage this and often disciplined them sharply. As Stephen Madriperla, his boyhood friend, often pointed out, he thought the way to love the most was to discipline your children. Mary Jane, age 50, a still pretty redhead woman and a former model, now worked part-time as a district newspaper distributor a few hours every week. She subjugated herself to her husband and usually deferred to his wishes, while she found her personal identity in working for the town. Because of her dedication, she was extremely well liked. For the many hours she contributed to the Athletic League Auxiliary, Welfare Board, Chamber of Commerce, Action Committee, and local Republican Club, just a few feet away from the table was a plaque which bore the inscription April 25th, 1976, in recognition of Mary Jane de la Roche for many years of devoted service to the Montvale Athletic League. The plaque summed up the family and the image they projected, but the image would soon be shattered, and before Thanksgiving weekend was over, the half-carved turkey that was left after dinner would be a grim reminder of a holiday celebration they'd never have again. Not knowing, they talked of many things as they dined on the ecru lace cloth to the glow of an orange candle surrounded by fall flowers, but mostly their favorite topic was tall, lanky Harry Jr. and their pride at having their oldest son, a student at the Citadel. Though Harry Jr. was wearing his jeans while munching on a turkey leg, he'd been the faithful grandson, and after the high school football games, obediently put on his dress uniform to show his grandparents how he looked as a military cadet. Now they wanted to see him in his full dress garb, so later he'd phone a fellow cadet to see if the local student, who had driven home by car, had remembered to bring the uniform as Harry had asked him to. "We brag about you to everyone," Harry Sr. said, beaming as he sliced more servings of turkey. "Somebody asked in church last week how you were coping with school, and I told him you were doing great. I said, he's making out fine. You're certainly proving everyone wrong who said you wouldn't last." "You've always been a fine boy," Honey quickly put in, "and you know how much we love you and want you to make good." From the other end of the table, Mary Jane declared, "Everyone thinks it's wonderful that you're at the Citadel. Wherever I go, people envy us because we have you there." While the talk went on around him, Harry Jr. had nothing to say since he had written from college that he wanted a real vacation and wouldn't talk about life at school until Thanksgiving night. Now he was thinking to himself that maybe he'd wait until Sunday, or possibly he could put it off until his Christmas vacation, which was only 2.5 weeks away. It wasn't unusual for young Harry to keep his thoughts to himself, because he was known to be a closed person who seldom showed his feelings. In fact, the entire family was not the kind of family in which the various members unburdened themselves to each other. Instead, they were fairly rigid, and the atmosphere was never quite right for talking about the anxieties they sometimes felt inside. Harry Jr. particularly kept the wall around himself, and when he had a problem, he worked it out alone. His nails were chewed and bitten, and often he twisted his reddish-brown hair and nervously rested his chin in his hands or fingered his ear when he talked. At 18, Harry was 6 foot 3 inches and wore glasses with gold metal frames. In person, he was far better looking than his picture on the living room mantel. He was also extremely well spoken for a person of his age, and though he'd earned average grades in school, his intelligence was above average. People saw different sides of him depending on what he showed, and while he was liked by some of his peers, he was disliked by others. Everybody can't love you, he'd say, and you can't love everyone either. He was always looking for people, though, and after he bought his car, it seemed he was constantly driving around searching for friends or peers. As the conversation continued, Harry Jr., in teenage fashion, wanted to be excused. As soon as he could, he left the group and headed for one of the loves of his life, his 1965 Ford Mustang. I decided to go out and look for someone, Harry Jr. would say later on, but I guess everybody was home that day. I couldn't find anyone. When Harry Jr. went out to his car, there was no way to foretell that as he'd left the table, he'd had his last Thanksgiving with the traditional family circle, and as he drove over the railroad tracks by Montvale's village green, he had no way of anticipating that before his vacation ended, he'd jump from a car on November 28th and yell to a cop by that green, "I just found my parents and my younger brother dead and my middle brother missing." But according to Patrolman Carl Olson, a heavy-set cop with sandy hair, who was making checks on businesses, Harry was observed at 4:10 a.m. on November 28th, going through a stop sign at a Grand Avenue intersection. As Olson watched him through the fog, the car Harry was driving, which was Mary Jane's, made a right turn to Park Avenue and headed toward Park Ridge, a town just south of Montvale. As I was about to pull the car over, Olson stated, Harry stopped and jumped from his car in front of Davy Jones's Locker, a local tavern and hangout. "Quick, come to my house," he hollered. "I've just found my parents and younger brother dead and my middle brother missing." Later, Harry would challenge the report that Olson pulled him over and insist that as soon as he saw the cop, he cut around the police car and spun his tires to stop him. He did this to gain attention, he said, since the horn in the 1970 Falcon didn't work. This was the first of several conflicting statements and claims. On their encounter, however, Olson tried to calm Harry down, but before he could get the full story, Harry jumped back into his car and called for Olson to follow him for the 3 blocks to his home. Quickly, the car sped around the green and up the hill to the house, while Olson radioed for Patrolman Fred Perotti to respond as a backup unit. Harry and Olson arrived at the house before Perotti came and entered through a side door that had a porch light outside. Then Harry led Olson to the living room, halfway up the stairs. "They're up there," he said, pointing to the bedrooms. Then he returned to the living room and slumped down on the couch, while Olson continued up the stairs. Olson entered the master bedroom first, but the horror of the scene he saw was sufficient to turn the stomach of even the toughest cop. He took a quick look at another room, then telephoned for more help. "When I entered the first bedroom on the left, I noted a bed with a large amount of blood on the pillow," he reported. Mrs. de la Roche was lying there, apparently dead. I noted the other half of the bed also had some bloodstains. As I looked down the hall into the other bedroom, I could see a twin bed and 2 human legs. Harry Sr. was dead on the bed. He was lying face down. Eric was face down on the floor by another twin bed. Next, Olson ran down the rubber-padded steps and confronted Harry Jr. with, "What the hell happened here?" "I was out till 4 o'clock on my last night home," Harry replied, "and when I returned, I noticed a porch light by the side door. The door that we always use wasn't lighted as usual. That gave me a very strange feeling that something might be wrong. My premonition grew stronger when Lucky, our dog, didn't come to meet me as soon as I entered the house. When I started to go upstairs to my room, I found my parents and brother." "And what did you do after that?" Olson asked. "I left the house immediately and got into my mother's car to go to Montvale Police Headquarters to report what I had found. No one was there, so I tried to use the emergency call box by the door. When I couldn't get any connection, I left to go to the Park Ridge Headquarters to the Triborough radio dispatch room. That's where I was going when I saw your car. But who would commit this crime? Olson queried. Who would do this terrible thing? What would the motive be? I don't know, Harry responded as he chain smoked cigarettes. All I can say is my father learned that my brother used drugs. They had a big fight about it, and Ronnie told my father he'd bury him under his bed. By then, Patrolman Perotti, however you pronounce it, who had answered the backup call, was also at the house. So while Olson checked for Ronnie, Perotti sat with Harry. When the search for Ronnie was unsuccessful, Olson alerted Chief George Hecker and Detective Michael O'Donovan of the Montvale Police and brought them up to date on what was going on. The officers also notified the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office and Dr. Lawrence Denson, the county medical examiner. Next, we'll send out a teletype to pick up Ronnie and hold him, Olson assured Harry. In the meantime, come out to the kitchen so I can ask you more questions. At the kitchen table, beneath a plaque saying, "What little boys are made of, frogs and snails and puppy dog tails," and by a telephone sticker that read, "In case of emergency call," Olson questioned Harry. "You're not a suspect," he explained, "but we need information you can give us." At 4:30 a.m., when this questioning began, Harry seemed relatively calm as he told how he'd last seen Ronnie between 6 and 7 on the previous night, when he dropped Ronnie off at the Nottingham apartments to make collections for his paper route. Oh, shit. After that, I went all over, Harry related to Olson. As other officers began to arrive, they filed one by one through the cluttered living room with Mary Jane's wedding portrait hanging by the fireplace. An embroidered sampler on a wall said, "After the rain comes the sunshine." The maple and the slip-covered furniture was strewn with sneakers and books and pendants. In the upstairs hall boosted Pascack Hills High School, Seton Hall University, the Citadel, and the Mets, Jets, and Knicks. In the kitchen, Olson told Harry it was routine procedure to ask him to empty his pockets. Harry, wearing blue jeans, combat boots, long johns, an army field jacket, and a blue T-shirt saying El Cid, complied immediately as he emptied his front jacket pocket. He removed the pipe and plastic bag containing an ounce of marijuana. "I guess I'm in trouble now," he said. "I could be kicked out of the Citadel for having marijuana." Next, Harry pulled out $78.76 in bills and change from one pants pocket and $501 from another. "That's a lot of money," Olson declared. "Do you always carry that much?" Last Monday, I cashed in my coin collection and got $1,600, Harry revealed. "I needed the money for tires for my Mustang, and I also bought a new watch. The money I'm carrying is what I have left." "We found Ronnie's wallet on his night table," Olson pointed out. "It had $10 in it, and his glasses were on top of it. Isn't it strange if he ran away that he didn't take his glasses and money?" "Not really," Harry answered. "Ronnie only needed his glasses to read, and he would have ample money because he was selling drugs." While Harry was being questioned, Detective Michael O'Donovan, a well-spoken officer who'd been with the Montvale Police 10 years, was placed in charge of the town's investigation. INV? Investigator Frank Delpreet, a Bergen County officer whose face was distinguished by a large brown mustache, took charge for the county. Detective Sergeant Louis Parisi of the New Jersey State Police handled things for the state. When he looked at the person, his penetrating eyes seemed to see right through you. The yard was roped off, and a sign went up. It said, "Crime scene, keep out." At 4:30 a.m., it was still too early for neighbors to be up and out, but soon the curious would gather outside while law officers on the inside tried without very much success to put together the incongruous pieces of this human puzzle. Before onlookers assembled, the Bergen County medical examiner arrived to do a scene investigation and pronounce the bodies dead. Dr. Lawrence Denson, a graying and balding, fairly slight man, had been a medical examiner since 1957. For the past 10 years, he'd been chief medical examiner, and in this capacity, he did scene investigations of approximately 20 crime scenes a year. Upstairs in the pale blue master bedrooms, he found Mary Jane in yellow pajamas. She had been shot twice in the head. There were traces of blood on the floor leading to the hall, and in the hall there were droppings of blood that led to Ronnie and Eric's room. In the boys' room with the football wallpaper and books on camping and crafts, Dr. Denson found Harry Sr. surrounded by blood and shot twice in the head. As he lay in Ronnie's four-poster twin bed, Harry Sr.'s body was clad in a white undershirt and tan plaid boxer shorts. Bruises and abrasions indicated he might have been dragged. On the floor beside the other twin bed, Eric's body was lying in a pool of blood. A waste bucket with the happy face sign was directly back of his head. A sign on his desk read, "Keep out." On further observation, Dr. Denson noted that Eric's t-shirt was blood-soaked, and though Eric had been shot 3 times, it appeared he had put up a fight and was struck on the head with a blunt instrument. Despite the fact that he had been shot, Dr. Denson said Eric had died from massive lacerations of the brain. The medical examiner ascertained that the time of all 3 deaths was approximately 3 a.m., and that the bullets fired came from a small caliber pistol. All of the bodies were warm. No rigor had set in. For the rest of the day, more officers continued to arrive. In addition to Olson and Perotti and O'Donovan, Del Preet and Parisi, others who worked were investigator Stephen Coons, Lieutenant Joseph Dodd, investigator Kenneth Nass, Detective John David, Detective Charles Lang, all of the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, Detective Sergeant Paul Likas, and Detective Leroy T. Smith of the New Jersey State Police, and Detective James Ewings, Lieutenant Anthony Scarangello, Officer Joseph Marigliana, Chief George Hecker, and Captain John Hanna of the Montvale Police Department. As the officers were shown around the crime scene, they were advised to search the house for the possible presence of persons in hiding. At 4:35, the officers set up an internal command post in the kitchen. Later, a secondary command post was established at the Montvale Police Headquarters. After Olson asked Harry to empty his pockets, O'Donovan gave him a pat-down search. All of his possessions were looked over again, and his wallet and car keys were taken. An examination of his clothing and fingernails disclosed no visible presence of blood. Next, O'Donovan, Perotti, and Olson checked the basement, ground floor, and second floor. They found no indications of ransacking or forced entry. Olson asked Harry if the house had an attic so the officers could look there. He reported Harry answered no, but Harry denied this answer. There was a door in the upstairs hallway that went to the attic, he explained later. 2 laundry baskets were kept by that door. You'd think the cops would open the door and see the attic steps. If you looked, you could also see the stairs from my bedroom closet. While the cops were going through the house, I saw my dog Lucky, Harry added. At first, he wouldn't leave my mother. Then, when the cops finally got him away, he acted terribly confused. As darkness turned into daylight, Olson and Perotti canvassed the neighborhood to see if any of the residents had heard or seen anything. Other officers checked the garage and other exterior premises. They also looked through the shrubbery and leaves to determine whether Ronnie had committed suicide. Later in the day, a neighbor said she'd heard a car idling loudly between 11 and 11:30 p.m. for half an hour or so. She stated it left squeaking its tires, but when she looked out of her window, there was no sign of the car. As part of the search, the 3 cars belonging to the family, Harry Sr.'s 1970 green Ford station wagon, Mary Jane's 1970 white Falcon, and Harry's 1965 Mustang, were inspected. A mysterious note in Harry's car, which Harry had no knowledge of putting there, said, "Call Grandma and call police." There was also a jacket with a fur hood on the seat of this car. While different aspects of the search continued, Harry was told that he was to have a routine paraffin test. The paraffin test is one that is used to determine whether a person has fired a gun in the recent past. While the test was being considered, an officer brought in equipment, but before Harry took the test, other officers declared it wouldn't be necessary. By that time, a little before 6 a.m., Captain John Hanna, a friend of the family who'd been with the Montvale Police Department for a total of 21 and a half years, came to the house to talk to Harry and do what he could do. He'd last seen the De La Roches on the previous weekend when the De La Roches and Hannas attended a Montvale Athletic League game at Port Jervis, New York. After the captain talked to Harry, he told him he would be taking him down to the Montvale Police Headquarters while the officers worked at the house. "You're not a suspect," he emphasized, "and you're not under arrest. We'll make some calls to try to find Ronnie, and you can give us some names." The time was approximately 6:30 a.m. as Harry and Captain Hanna drove to the Montvale station, with Harry resting his chin in his hand and having little to say. They parked by the door of the building, and as they went inside, Harry began the longest, most eventful day of his life. Only 12 hours later, Harry, who'd never been in court or trouble with the law, was arraigned before Judge Fred C. Golda of the Bergen County Superior Court and charged with 4 counts of murder. Following the shocking arraignment, he was quickly escorted from Montvale headquarters, past TV cameras and reporters, and away from the waiting crowd, and driven to Hackensack to Bergen County Jail. No one could believe what had happened. No one knew what lay ahead. And chapter 2 lay ahead for us, the Harry De La Roche family. Goodbye, bruv. Good boy.